The Iron Mother was alive. She wasn't sleek or graceful like the modern cruisers patrolling the inner systems. Her hull was a patchwork of old cargo plating and modular habitat clusters, built thick and broad like a fortress. Once a high-volume ore freighter, she had hauled rock between mining colonies for over a century before falling out of service. Now, 6 years and hundreds of thousands of labor hours later, she had become something else: a colony ship, a womb ship, a city-sized ark meant to carry humanity to the edge of known space and give birth to a new world. Today was her last day in dry dock. Inside her pressurized guts, life thrummed. Welders were still sealing a few final hull panels. Med-techs inventoried stims and trauma packs. Engineers in grease-smudged jumpsuits debated over reactor output margins and venting thresholds. Every corridor buzzed with motion, tension, anticipation, and laughter. Children darted between compartments, weaving around adults and machinery with the chaotic joy only children possessed. A boy with a mop head of dark curls clutched a wooden spoon like a sword and shouted, "No aliens allowed past this checkpoint." "I'm not an alien," a girl yelled, launching herself out of a storage duct. "I'm a Terran scout." Their impromptu fort, a barricade of sleeping bags, padded crates, and scavenged deck chairs, stood proud in a forgotten corner of Module D4. It was absurdly placed and utterly perfect. Their parents didn't mind. Not today. On the upper observation deck, Commander May Lynn Carter watched it all unfold through the thick pressure glass. The deck was quiet, isolated from the bustle of final operations. Outside, the enormous skeletal arms of the orbital dry dock encased the ship like a spider's web, floodlights casting stark white across the hull. The Terran Stellar Authority, TSA, humanity's governing body across the settled galaxies, had given the Iron Mother its launch clearance last month. But May knew better than to trust official stamps. Bureaucracy didn't keep people alive. Behind her, footsteps rang soft on steel. She didn't need to turn. "You're early," she said. Jorah's Hale came to stand beside her. His short-cropped gray hair and weathered face bore the marks of a soldier-turned-builder. He'd once commanded an armored unit in the outer reaches. Now he was the ship's security lead and her closest advisor. "Didn't sleep," Jorah muttered. "Got the shakes." May gave him a sideways glance. "Old injuries?" "No," he said. "Excitement." She smiled faintly. They stood in silence for a long moment, watching the distant lights of transport shuttles weaving through the orbital grid. Farther out, the Terran Defense Fleet shimmered, one of the few reminders that the Iron Mother, for all her independence, was still part of something larger. A single military, answering to the civilian authority of the TSA, spread across 23 galaxies. "No destination yet," Jorah said at last. "That's what the gossip says." May didn't answer at first. She leaned against the railing and followed the flickering path of a logistics drone. Below, in the common plaza between modules, someone had set up a makeshift music station. Old Earth jazz spilled softly into the hallways. A toddler danced in lazy circles while 2 older kids clapped out a beat. "No destination yet," May repeated, "but we may have one soon." Jorah raised an eyebrow. She tapped the COM tab on her wrist. The thin glass surface glowed to life. "Incoming call. Marrow, Selene, TPSA encryption. Terran Planetary Survey Authority." "Give me the room," May said. Jorah frowned, but nodded. "You trust her?" "I do." "Then so do I." He turned and left. May waited until the door sealed behind him before accepting the call. The air above her shimmered, then formed the translucent projection of a woman's face. Selene Marrow's image was staticky, but clear enough. She wore a pressurized EVA collar and a surveyor's headset. Her surroundings looked cramped, likely a research outpost or scout ship. "May," she said without preamble, "I've got something." May's heart skipped a beat. "Talk." "It's a planet," Selene said. "Unlisted. Designated PX 407 grams. On the edge of the outer red line. TPSA scanned it 6 months ago but shelved it. Low oxygen levels, mean surface temperatures too low for standard habitation, and 80 to 95% rainfall year-round." May frowned. "Sounds like a pass." "I thought so too," Selene said. "Until I dug deeper. Geologically stable. No major predators. Consistent hydrosphere. The atmospheric pressure's borderline, but with filtration and localized heaters, a colony could thrive. Terraforming isn't even needed, just adaptation." May paced slowly. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I haven't filed it. No one else knows. The TPSA passed it over. I'm offering it to you first." May looked up sharply. "That's a career-ending move. Sell." Selene shrugged. "I don't care. I saw what you're building. I believe in it." They locked eyes across the void of light years and encryption. "I'll meet you en route," Selene added. "Once you're deep enough to avoid surveillance, I'll rendezvous in a survey shuttle." Coordinates will follow in a secure data packet once you clear dry dock. Until then, this channel is burned. The hologram began to waver. Celine, May started. Don't wait too long, Celine cut in. The longer the Council and the TSA sit on their hands, the harder it'll be to slip away. You've got one shot. Don't miss it. The signal ended. May exhaled, long and slow. Below, the children were now chasing a remote control cleaning bot through the corridor, giggling as it zigzagged between their feet. In another room, someone played a flute, off-key, but beautiful in its imperfection. This wasn't just a mission. It was a family. And tomorrow, they would jump. The morning of departure didn't feel like history. It felt like another workday in the guts of the Iron Mother, filled with coffee too bitter, systems checklists, and half-repaired bulkheads sealed with industrial tape. Children darted through the corridors, barefoot and shrieking, while parents barked half-hearted warnings and engineers ducked out of the way. Someone's dog, small and mangy, had learned to open the pressure doors. It ran past Habitation Block 4 with a stolen breakfast pouch clenched in its teeth. In the Commons, music played from portable speakers, old Earth songs warped slightly by time and compression. The smell of brewed algae tea mingled with lubricant and steel. This was home. In the command module, Captain May Lynn Carter stood at the wide panoramic bridge window, watching the dry dock umbilicals detach one by one from the ship's flank. Each release echoed through the ship with a dull thunk, like distant heartbeats. The stars waited. Final mooring to Dock Alpha released, came the voice of Senior Engineer Toma Bran across the internal comms. "We are floating free, Captain." "Copy that," Carter replied, steadying her voice. "Navigation?" "Course plotted for exit vector Lima 12, said Yoran Kell, her second in command. His tone was calm, but his left hand tapped a nervous rhythm against the console. "We've got 3 civilian tugs assigned to push us clear of orbital drift." "Engines?" Carter turned slightly. "Main drives are in standby. Secondary fusion grid is holding stable," said Engineer Kalamesk, wiping her hands on a rag as she walked onto the bridge. "We light her up when the tug's clear." "Copy. All sections, secure for departure. And someone find that damn dog." Chuckles rolled through the bridge as the crew went to work. There was no ceremony, no final speech. That was by design. The Iron Mother wasn't a government project or a corporate colonization initiative. She was built by hands calloused by war and loss, run by families who had scraped and bartered for 6 years to weld a dream into existence. They didn't need fanfare. In the launch gallery, families strapped themselves into long rows of padded seating that once held freight crates. Children squirmed. Toddlers slept in slings across their mothers' chests. The eldest, grandparents, veterans, the first to commit to the project, sat with eyes closed, some praying silently, others simply thinking of those left behind. Down in medical, the last few crates were being locked down when Nurse Haru Matsuda glanced up at the overhead displays. The ship's internal timecode ticked forward. +00:00:05:00. They were officially underway. The 3 orbital tugs roared silently against the Iron Mother's hull, shoving the colony ship away from the skeletal arms of the station. The view from the external feeds shifted slowly, drydock rotating out of view, then the orbital path of Corona 3's moon appearing like a pale disk to starboard. At 500 kilometers clear, the main engines ignited. The vibration was low but persistent, more felt in the bones than heard. Somewhere deep in the ship's belly, a child cried, and another burst into nervous laughter. In the bridge, the artificial gravity trembled, then steadied. Cal Thorne, a young systems operator barely 19, whispered, "We're flying." Captain Carter folded her arms across her chest and exhaled. "We're flying," she agreed. 12 hours later, with the Iron Mother now pushing at fractional light speed toward deep space, the bridge was quiet. The urgency of launch had given way to long-haul vigilance. Carter sat in her private ready room, a small chamber with 2 mismatched chairs and a worn-out plant that had somehow survived 3 drydock relocations. On the display before her, a face appeared. Celine Marrow, live via subspace. The delay was less than a second, thanks to priority relays purchased at great expense. "You're clear," Carter said. "You can talk." Celine looked tired. Her hair was pinned back, and her uniform bore the sharp lines of the Terran Planetary Survey Authority, TPSA. "I have your world." Carter didn't breathe for a moment. "It's not a paradise," Celine continued. "Class 3 Terra, low atmospheric O2, long-term mask usage required. High rainfall. Temperatures vary between 46 degrees Celsius on the hottest days and -70 degrees Celsius in the coldest seasons. It's brutal, but it's stable, it's real, and more importantly, it's unclaimed." "And legal?" "I pushed it through on a technicality," Celine said, leaning closer. Survey completed, logged, but never submitted for development due to atmospheric constraints. I'm the only one who's been there. The file will say it's marginal, and that's enough for the TPSA to look the other way. Why tell us? Celine hesitated. Because I want to come with you. I want to see what people do when they aren't running a spreadsheet from a safe orbit. I want to see if we can make a home where no one else would try. Captain Carter nodded slowly. You have a seat waiting. I'll rendezvous mid-transit. I'll bring every planetary survey file I can smuggle. But you'll need to decide when to tell the others. I will, Carter said, and the screen went black. That evening, the mess hall smelled of baked protein loaf and something vaguely tomato-like. Families sat close. Music played. A boy of 10 danced near the water dispensers with a younger girl, both in socked feet. An older woman called them to sit. Tomorrow, Carter said to Yoran Kell as they ate side by side, we tell them. You think they'll care? I think, she said, they've waited too long not to care. Yoran nodded. Across the hall, an older man played guitar, real strings, not synthesized, and a lullaby from old Earth wound its way through the chatter and clatter. Outside, the stars had grown sharper. The noise of dry dock was gone. Only the whisper of drive systems and the heartbeat of a people moving forward remained. They were going. The message hit the ship like a silent pulse. All hands and civilians to designated viewing stations. Captain Carter will address the ship in 15 minutes. This is a mandatory broadcast. The voice was smooth, even courteous, but no one misunderstood the weight. You didn't summon every man, woman, and child unless something had changed. And something had changed. On Deck 5, inside the midship atrium where the children usually played tag between ivy-covered hydroponic tanks, teachers paused their lessons. A freckled boy named Milo stopped mid-sentence as his slate screen faded to the captain's insignia. He blinked at it. Are we turning back? Asked his seatmate, wide-eyed. No, said their teacher, a pale, wiry woman who had once served in the logistics corps. We're not turning back. We've just arrived somewhere. Across the ship, movement swelled. Civilian families shuffled out of communal quarters, some still holding half-washed mugs of tea or children's jackets. Off-duty maintenance crews rubbed grease from their hands. Even the retirees, those too old or fragile for heavy labor, made their way slowly to screens. On Deck 2, Yoran Kell stood beside the galley's main screen, arms folded, back straight. He had the look of a man preparing for bad news out of habit. Beside him, an enormous man with skin like polished basalt muttered, Bet it's a dead rock. If it is, Yoran replied, we'll turn it into something living. The man snorted. Always the damn soldier, huh? No, said Yoran. Just someone who's tired of drifting. The forward observation dome was already packed when Captain Maylin Carter's image filled the screen. No filters, no cinematic framing, just her, barely lit by the soft ambient glow of stars and reactor shielding. She wore her fleet uniform, unadorned. Her expression was calm but unmistakably weary. Good evening, she said. We have a planet. Silence everywhere, deep and reverent. Some people stopped breathing. It's not what we hoped for, she continued, but it's real. It's ours if we want it. She gave the details as cleanly as she could. Atmospheric instability, high rainfall, low oxygen, massive temperature shifts, terraforming possible, hostile to the unprepared, the kind of place others passed over without even marking. We don't get perfect, she said, voice tightening. We don't get invitations or banners or parades. We get the places no one else dares to touch, and we make them into something better. Her eyes searched the lens. Landing is 6 weeks out. I'll see you there. The feed cut. The ship exhaled. At first, it was like watching people wake up from different dreams. Some stood frozen, the news slow to reach their nerves. Others exchanged glances. Nervous, exhilarated, unsure. A technician laughed, sudden and barking, then wiped at her eyes like she hadn't meant to. In the long corridor behind Dorm Block C, a father knelt to speak to his daughter. Does it have trees? She asked. I don't know yet. Can I name one? He smiled faintly. Of course. The mood turned practical within hours. That was the way of things aboard the Iron Mother. There wasn't time for drawn-out emotional digestion, not on a ship that required every adult to contribute, every day. Shift rosters were adjusted. Technical departments kicked into phase shift mode. ALPA, Adaptive Labor Pattern A, meant 1/3 of the adult population worked, another trained, the third rested in cycles. No one was off duty for long. In hydroponics, the old nutrient root tanks were doubled in yield prediction to offset the atmospheric inconsistencies expected on the surface. Engineers began rerunning oxygen generator protocols. School schedules changed too. Children were introduced to terrain maps, hand tool instruction, and basic survival theory. A 9-year-old boy muttered, "We're gonna fight monsters." His friend, older by a year and already missing 2 front teeth, said, "Nah, we're gonna build stuff." They were both right. In the fabricator bay, sparks flew. The massive Omicron-class fabricator began churning out modular shelter units, compact power cells, and framework stabilizers. A dozen drones worked autonomously beside volunteers. The noise became part of the ship's heartbeat. Medical reassigned half its diagnostic equipment for atmospheric response prep. A new section of the infirmary was unofficially dubbed the Breather's Nest, a quiet joke about the thin air to come. In the galley, food production was recalibrated. New menus were drawn. Longer fermentation, more vitamin density. The lead cook muttered, "If I see one more moss loaf recipe, I'm jumping out an airlock." No one laughed. Then someone did. Then everyone did. The personal spaces shifted. In the rec hall, a young couple sat curled on a bench, quietly arguing about whether to plant real fruit trees or biogen hybrids once they landed. Nearby, a former university botanist offered unsolicited advice without looking up from her knitting. In the shared observatory, a teenager painted the stars in oil across a square of cloth. When someone asked why, she said, "Because soon we won't see them this way anymore." In the dim quiet of Deck 9's forgotten reading lounge, an older man held a data slate to his chest. It had the names of everyone who hadn't made it this far. He whispered them one by one. Night fell on the ship. It wasn't night in the astronomical sense, just a scheduled lights down period to maintain circadian rhythm, but it felt like night. A deeper quiet settled over the decks. Captain Carter sat alone in her quarters. A cup of cooling stem tea rested near her elbow, untouched. A grainy map of the planet pulsed on her screen: storm systems, wind zones, heat pockets. The first scouting plan was already half written. Celine's final message blinked green. 16 days until intercept. Shuttle window confirmed. Stay quiet until then. Carter leaned back and let the hum of the ship fill the room. It wasn't peace, but it was purpose. It was movement. It was enough. Somewhere below, a child dreamt of running in rain. Somewhere above, drones whirred in their mechanical lullaby. And all around, the Iron Mother carried them toward a world no one wanted, except them.